So Bakugo is back in this episode, and he is unbelievably powerful. Like, he's clearly at the apex of his power. I mean, go figure, we're in the final season in one of the last episodes of the series, so yeah, he's gonna be the strongest he's ever been. But he's like much stronger than I anticipated him being. Because ostensibly he's like as powerful as Izuku was at like 100% of One For All. Not taking into consideration like gear shift and all that stuff, because then Izuku kind of jumped the shark in the series at that point, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But speaking of gear shift, that's how Bakugo winds up saving All Might in this sequence, because we saw at the end of the previous episode, All For One was about to rip All Might in half until Bakugo finally woke up from his death coma, I guess you could say, after Edgeshot had saved him. And Bakugo just immediately like propels himself down to where Izuku's holding off Shigaraki, and they don't even have to talk or think, they just immediately know what they're gonna do. And then Izuku just grabs Bakugo in one fluid motion while still keeping Shigaraki captive, activating gear shift in his second gear, and then just whips Bakugo at All Might. Super ultrasonic mega hyper speed, which of course is synergizing with Bakugo's cluster ability, which we'll get into. And he gets there and successfully saves All Might, which of course is also dispelling Night Eye's vision of All Might dying this whole time. Like I said in my previous review, it ultimately comes down to you just being strong enough to overcome Night Eye's quirk, which I guess is like breaking space-time at the same way, because Night Eye is essentially seeing into space-time to be able to predict the future the way that he does. And I also like the meta commentary kind of in this sequence, because All Might's like, I thought the predecessor is supposed to die after he passes on the power, which of course is like, you know, saying, hey, this is a trope, right? The teacher is supposed to die eventually once the student surpasses him. And then Night Eye's like, well, you know, that kind of just happens in comic books. But this is just Horikoshi saying, hey, I'm subverting this trope. Yes, I know that I was building up All Might to die this entire time and it seemed extremely likely, but I decided he's gonna live. Which, of course, I'm on board with. I accepted that All Might was going to die, but I'm glad that he didn't. But aside from that, we're also seeing that Edgeshot is like still alive somehow after doing his spaghettification no jutsu to Bakugo to save his life. And I was thinking, like, how does this work? I'm not saying that Edgeshot needed to die. I'm just curious as to, like, where's his brain and like his organs? How is he alive right now? I mean, I'm not mad at it, I'm just like confused. And of course, this is all wrapped up with a nice little full circle moment where we see All Might saved Bakugo, and now Bakugo is saving All Might. You know, the beginning of the series, end of the series, full character arc, yada yada yada. It's pretty cool. We're also getting like quick updates on everything else that's going on in the series right now, because while the big main focal point is the final four of the ultimate tournament of the series, I guess you could say. It's like Izuku versus Shigaraki, Bakugo versus All For One. There are still tons of other moving parts that are going on right now in this final war. Spinner has regressed to his normal form once again, and he's being arrested. The high-end Nomus have been defeated, or the near high-ends. The heroes are still fighting this guy, Ghastly. This guy kind of has like a cool design. I wish they would have went more into him. I guess he's kind of supposed to be like the Japanese version of the Babadook or something, maybe. Skeptic was taken down by the Ketsubutsu students. The whole big elaborate evacuation system that was set up in season 7, the whole thing that, you know, connects to Shiketsu, that's just quickly being shown here. It's like, hey guys, actually, that worked. And we're still seeing that Kurogiri and President Mike and Aizawa are still MIA at this point, but of course they're gonna come back. We need to see how that whole big triangle resolves. Then we're coming back to Bakugo taking on All For One, and also in this episode, All For One kind of does what I said that he should have this whole time. Like, he looks down at All Might after being saved by Bakugo, and he's like, do I kill All Might? And then he looks up at Shigaraki, and he's like, no, let me actually just go to Shigaraki like I was supposed to this whole time. And he just goes back to me saying that All For One is not a smart guy. But going further into the fight itself, like we were talking about in the beginning, Bakugo is so powerful right now. He's just so incredibly fast and has such incredible firepower using his cluster ability, which is just taking full advantage of his quirk. I guess you could say this is like the awakening of his quirk, because initially Bakugo would just use the sweat glands in his hands to activate activate his quirk, which is, nitroglycerin, which was a fusion of his parents' ability. But now he's just taking advantage of the sweat in general, coming out of all of his pores and whatnot. He can even like circulate the sweat in his body somehow. Like earlier in the episode when Edshot is talking to Bakugo about, yeah, you brought yourself back too. It wasn't just me. And we see like the sweat in his body, like exploding himself back to life. But anyway, Bakugo using all the pores in his body and just exploding the sweat in clusters. That's why it's called cluster. And I'm sure there's like another analogous term to it. But I really do love this sequence. I've always really liked how Bakugo is handled in this series, especially from a battle perspective. He is like one of the more interesting characters for sure, because you can see even more so than Izuku, because Bakugo had to work much harder than him. Because Bakugo's story, of course, is that he's ultra talented. He was just born to be the best, essentially. And that's why he's been so conflicted with Izuku, because Izuku wasn't born to be the best. He was kind of just given the power and he was the best. But then you see talent working hard, and that's like the ultimate combo. That's how you get Kobe's, LeBron's, Jordan's, because there's tons of people that are just super talented and they only go really so far because they don't want to work as hard as other people. And that's also why I really appreciate All Might so much, because he's not talented at all. He just worked super hard to become the greatest of all time. Yes, he was given One for All, but it was not nearly as powerful as it is now. Like, All Might made One for All what it is. It was kind of powerful when he got it for sure. It made him as strong as, like, I don't know, Death Arms or something like that, because the fourth user was the first guy who really took advantage of the stockpiler aspect of it. And by the time Nana got it, it was superhuman in strength for sure, but it was All Might who grinded that out and made it become the god tier quirk that it is. Because by the time Izuku got it, he didn't really have to work that hard. What did he do? Like clean up stuff on a beach for like a couple weeks or something? I want to make another video about this, going into why Izuku has never surpassed All Might and never will. Probably going to trigger a lot of people. I don't really care. It's just how I see things. Sorry, tangent over. Bakugo is so powerful in this sequence that it reminds me of how powerful he becomes at the end of the second movie when he temporarily gets One for All. I mean, he's not that powerful, of course. Like in the movie, once he does get One for All, he is kind of just as fast as he is in this episode, but his quirk is on another level. His quirk is like lava explosions at that point, which he clearly doesn't have in this episode, but the speed and physicality is pretty comparable, actually. And this is just from Bakugo running on pure adrenaline, pure end of series Deuteragonist power up, I guess you could say. And he is taking it to All for One. He's outspeeding him, he's outmaneuvering him, and he's like making All for One kind of like glitch out, I guess, from the pressure that he's putting on him. And All for One is like being reminded of the second user of One for All, Kudo. And this guy and his relation to Bakugo always makes me like laugh in retrospect, because building up to this sequence, there was a lot of like parallels between Kudo and Bakugo. I mean, of course, the aesthetic similarities, which we'll get into, but it gave birth to so many theories. And one of the biggest theories was that Kudo is Bakugo, but there's some kind of like time travel aspect to it. That's actually how I became friends with Turtle Quirk. That was like Turtle Quirk's like big breakout theory, was like the Bakugo time travel theory thing. And I was on board with it because it would have been kind of cool. I mean, it didn't literally have to play out the way that we thought it would, but just if Horikoshi could have made sense of it. But aside from the time travel stuff, it was more realistic, I guess, to say, oh, Kudo is like an ancestor of Bakugo or something, something along those lines. But it turns out, no, he kind of just looks like Bakugo, that's it. It reminds All for One of him. And All for One is like so angry at Kudo because he was, I guess, stole the brotherly love of Yoichi from him, which we'll get way more into in the next episode once we get into All for One's backstory. That episode's going to be really fascinating. I can't wait to break that one down. But anyway, Bakugo just beats down All for One further. That's where the episode ends. Like I said, we're going to get more into All for One in the next episode. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this one, guys. Let me know what you thought about this episode. What do you think about what I said? How angry are you? And if you liked the video, please give it a like and please subscribe. If you haven't already, have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.